Hi, everybody. This is Reverend Erin Walter, Executive Director and Minister of your Texas UU Justice Ministry. And I'm here with a special guest. I'm going to let him introduce himself in a second, but I want to tell you where I am. I've got my stole on still because I'm on my way home to Austin after spending the weekend in Dallas and Fort Worth, having our big UU the Vote activation in North Texas. We were also in Plano for worship this morning with the Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt and Reverend Vale Weller from the UUA. So it's been a really big weekend. And I was a little nervous to go out and knock on doors just because that's not something I always do, like knocking on people's doors to talk about voting. But it was an amazing experience. And we have a few weeks left to do that. So we're really excited about it. And we have this very special empowered safety training coming up in Austin on October 19th, which is what we're going to talk about. But the reason I bring up the door knocking is because often today, as we were leaving people's homes after talking to them about voting, they would say, be safe out there, be safe out there, which was really interesting because we were just walking through neighborhoods in daylight, right? But a lot of us are concerned about safety in the culture that we're living in here in Texas, here in the United States, all over the world. It's an important thing to talk about. And we're just a little bit a ways from the election. And a lot of you are doing election work, election protection. There's a lot of reasons why safety is on our mind in our congregations and out there in our justice work and our democracy work. So with all that preamble, I'm so excited for you to meet Dave, and I'll let him tell you a bit about this empowered safety training that we're doing in Austin, and you are invited. And gosh, I hope the highway isn't too loud. Hi, Dave. Welcome. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. Dave's going to be training us.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay, maybe we have a little bit of lag on the coffee shop Wi-Fi, but can you tell folks who've never been to a training like what you're going to be doing for us, what they can expect and why they should come?
Sure. So I offer a lot of different trainings for safety, but one of the ones that is highly sought after is a training that I do on responding to violent critical incidents. So we've seen an uptick in the targeting of houses of worship, workplaces, political events, and schools, right? Targeted by what we call violent critical incidents. That can be anything from an active shooter to an attacker armed with another type of weapon or a bombing. And so I come out of the live event space where I worked for over 20 years as a touring roadie. And one of the things that we saw starting in 2017 in Las Vegas and also Manchester was the targeting of mass live events for violent critical incidents, for violent attacks, mass casualty events. And then we've seen this kind of permeate throughout private life and work life and religious life across the United States since. So the training focuses on what any everyday person can do, regardless of skill level or ability level, to be able to take power and control back in a situation that is ultimately one that has a lot of power and control in the hands of the attacker. So our goal is to give the skills, the resources, the understanding of how to take power and control back in these situations, how to keep the people around you safe, and also how to deal with the aftermath of a violent critical incident. How do we help keep people alive after a violent attack? So we also go over medical skills that are necessary to do that as well, which are sorely lacking in a lot of our communities.
Thank you. And you've worked with Unitarian Universalist communities in Arizona before. That's where you live, right? Sort of.
Yeah, so yeah. I've done a lot of training for the UUs here in Arizona. I do training at public schools, other houses of worship, nonprofits, border shelters. I've done a lot of different training for a lot of different aspects of the community out here in Arizona. So,
Thank you. And
yeah.
so Texas UUs, we got introduced to Dave through our dear friend Janine Gelsinger, who was the executive director previously of the UU State Action Network in Arizona. Janine has worked with the Texas UU Justice Ministry Board on our retreats. She's a wonderful friend of our organization. So, sorry, it's very loud here. Janine and Dave will be coming to Texas to work with us on October 19th, and we really hope you will join. Send 1, 2 people from your congregation. If you can get a team, if you have a safety team, if there's someone who's just been really interested in how the congregation can be safe, but also if you have folks who are interested in how we live our Unitarian Universalist values in this context. Dave, is there anything you can share with us about kind of the ethics that underpin what you're sharing with folks in these trainings?
Sure. So, starting with typically Janine will give a de-escalation training as part of our training. And then we'll go into ways to kind of control emotional reactions and other stuff, just dealing with trauma, right? In a really root way, kind of in your soul. How do we deal with this kind of trauma in our everyday life? So we go over that too. But my background is coming from a place of trying to build compassionate, empathetic communities, ones that aren't walled off to people on the outside. And that's what a lot of UU congregations deal with, this back and forth of how do we have an open and affirming congregation while also being safe and able to defend ourselves if someone does target the congregation, right? So trying to walk that very, very thin line of how do we maintain an open, affirming, compassionate, empathetic organization while also being able to ensure the lives and safety of the people within it. It's a hard line to walk. And so we kind of ask those questions and try to figure out what works best for each congregation and at least start those conversations locally to figure out how do you not sacrifice your morals or your ethics to create a safe space.
Thank you. That's so helpful. So we'll do some practical training. We'll talk about things like de-escalation, but also how to keep people safe and alive if there is an emergency or a violent event. And, it's very timely for us. Just this morning, I was leading worship at Community UU in Plano, Texas. They experienced a firebombing at their doorstep a year or two ago. And so they've been dealing with how they keep themselves safe. Last night, I was at the 125th anniversary celebration of First Unitarian Church of Dallas, which does a lot of public abortion access work. And there were probably 40 protesters outside on their sidewalk, trying to interfere with us going in to have a celebration. So there's those things. We have our folks who are going to protest and actions at college campuses here in Texas. We've dealt with a lot of issues there. We've dealt with things in our capital. So Texas UU Justice Ministry members, we want you to feel empowered, as the safety training name implies, empowered to be thinking about how you're showing up and your safety within our ethics. So Dave, we're really excited to welcome you to Texas. Thank you for taking the time to talk a little bit about it. Is there anything else you would want people to know or before they sign up?
I just know that this is an overwhelming conversation to have with a lot of people. But I think it's really an important one that's vital, that often gets overlooked. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the active shooter training that happens across the United States is targeted to a very kind of macho demographic of how we handle these types of incidents. And the problem is that typically the victims of this type of violence are not going to be the macho guys, right? And it's very targeted the way that it plays out. And unfortunately, we need to work hard to make sure that everyone feels empowered to be able to respond. So that's my goal with this training, is to help pass on those skills to anyone of any background in a way that empowers them and doesn't just intimidate them. So
thank you so much. Okay, folks, and we will, like Dave said, it's a conversation, and we will not just be doing this training, but continuing these conversations based on what folks glean and gain from it, and the discussions we want to have moving forward. This is an in-person training because of the nature of what Dave and Janine are bringing. So we hope you can come in person to First UU Austin on Saturday, October 19th. And there'll be more information wherever you're watching this video. Look in the text and we'll have more information, but you can always reach out to me, Erin at TXUUJM.org, and we can talk about it if you have more questions. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to chat a little bit, and we look forward to seeing you in Austin in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited.
We are too. Thank you.